1. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on your location. My name is Latrice Hill, and I serve as the National Director of Outreach for USDA's Farm Service Agency. My office manages outreach and education for FSA programs across the country. We have 51 state offices and over 2,100 county offices, all with outreach coordinators to assist with program education. As we get started, a couple of reminders regarding today's broadcast. Please know that right now participants are in listen-only mode. You are, however, able to submit questions through the chat box. We will respond to as many questions as we can today. However, due to time, I'm not sure if we'll be able to answer everyone's questions. So with that being said, we will take those questions, have them answered, and add it to the CFAP Frequently Asked Question page, which can be found on farmers.gov. Before we start with today's presentation, I'm honored to have with us FSA's Administrator Richard Fordyce, who wants to say a few words to you before we begin. Richard?
Well, thank you, Latrice, and good afternoon or good morning, and thank you for joining the webinar on CFAP for our stakeholders organizations. As you know, May 26th, so the day after Memorial Day, USDA, through the Farm Service Agency, began accepting applications from producers for the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program, or as we have all come to refer to it by as CFAP. We know farmers and ranchers are facing a tough time right now, really to say the least, and we are making every effort that we can to provide much needed support as quickly as possible. I would also just maybe to reiterate that point, after the CARES package was passed by Congress and signed by the President, we went to work immediately to stand up this program. And it really was an all hands on deck approach. Folks that you'll hear from today, a whole bunch of people within FSA, but also the Secretary's office, the Office of the Chief Economist, Agricultural Marketing Service, other agencies within the department really just all jumped in and really allowed us to get this program stood up as quickly as we've been able to. As of June 3rd, FSA has approved more than $545 million in payments to producers who've applied. We knew that there was a lot of expectation and anticipation for this program, and that's certainly been the case. You know, as the FSA administrator and as a farmer myself, I understand that while the disruptions to markets and demand is significant, these payments will only cover a portion of the impacts on farmers and ranchers. With organizations like you, USDA will be able to reach more producers with this program who may not be familiar with FSA or our farm programs. Today, we're going to review program tools developed specifically for organizations like yours to help us amplify the program sign-up, which ends on August 28th. You know, we value so much our stakeholders, our external stakeholders, those organizations that you all represent and work for, representing members and others, and the ability that you have and the reach and influence that you have to help us get the word out. I'll let Latrice, who you heard from earlier, who again leads our National Outreach Office, get started. But I wanted to say hello and to personally thank you all for participating in today's webinar. Be sure to tell your members and producers about the upcoming series of producer webinars that we have scheduled this month. And again, thank you so much for being on, and thanks for what you do for agriculture in this country, and thanks for being partners with us at USDA. Latrice?
Thanks so much, Richard. Well, before we begin today's discussion, I'm sure some of you are saying, why am I here? Who is here? What are we going to talk about? First, I'd like to remind everyone that this is a stakeholder organization webinar. And this is intended for those organizations, groups, associations that work with producers or potential producers who may have an interest in this program. Today, we'd like to talk to you a little bit about the program so that you have an understanding and you can provide that to your members or your producers. And then understanding all of those commodities that were not part of CFAP, how can producers submit additional data through the NOFA process, and then a stakeholder toolkit, which has been designed specifically for you, for organizations, to help us amplify the message so that you can include on your social media sites. We have developed tweets, we have developed messages, graphics, all types of things that you can use to help us get the word out about this program. And as Richard alluded to earlier, we will have producer webinars, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but those are coming up beginning next week. This is meant just for you as an organization. So let's get started. Exactly what is CFAP? And again, we call it CFAP, but it is the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program. And this is a program that was part of the CARES Act. We realize that COVID has affected our country in ways none of us could even fathom. And farmers and ranchers and producers, of course, are not exempt from this. And they face so many different challenges. And we're hoping that through this program, we can help alleviate some of those burdens and challenges that they're experiencing. And they are experiencing these things, either price declines or supply chain disruption, just as the administrator said earlier. The pandemic, as we know, actually caused a decline in the market, and it's causing farmers and ranchers and producers to be distressed. And so this program is actually designed to help alleviate that and to provide some assistance. We know some producers may have had challenges in getting their products to the market before they spoiled, or some may have had to have dumped milk, had contracts getting canceled or affected by restaurants closings or schools closing. So through this program, USDA hopes to provide direct payments that will cover a portion of some of that impact that has impacted farmers and ranchers and producers. Initially, to ensure that funds are provided to as many producers as possible, applications will be accepted and approved initially at 80% of the maximum payment. And any additional payment will be determined by the Secretary at a later date, but initially it will be an 80% of eligible payment that is made now. Again, as the administrator said, sign up began on the 26th, and we have noticed that there are a few states that have been really active with applications. I think Illinois was leading the pack last I heard earlier this week. And just on yesterday on our farmers.gov website, a payment chart was made available. So if some of you haven't had an opportunity to do that, and we'll talk about that later as well under resources, but you'll be able to see the payments that have been made per state as of earlier this week, I believe as of June 3rd. But this sign-up runs through August 28th, and applications will be accepted and processed upon receipt. And if that application is approved, FSA will process that payment and ensure that the producer receives at least 80% of the payment, as I alluded to before initially. So because we're trying to reach as many producers as possible, as quickly as possible, there's certain documentation for losses that will not be required for this application process. However, we do want to say that producers should have documentation available because spot checks will be required at a later date. But initially, producers will self-certify to the information, but it is important that they know they should have that documentation on file for when spot checks are needed. Eligibility. So FSA has identified particular or certain commodities that are eligible for CFAP, and it is based on these commodities that have experienced, there's been at least 5% greater national price decline as a result of the coronavirus. There has to be substantial marketing cost, commodities that have had substantial marketing cost or reductions or inventories, substantial inventories. FSA is hoping that we have identified all of the price data collected by USDA by commodities that have been traded and through future markets. But for right now, we are looking at milk, livestock, non-specialty crops, wool, and specialty crops. These are the covered commodities for CFAP. To be a little bit more specific, those non-specialty crops, I'm jumping ahead. Non-specialty crops that are listed are all included on fact sheets that we have available on the farmers.gov site, and we will talk about that a little bit later. But it's important that your members and producers know that they do not need to be an existing USDA customer to participate in this program. The eligibility requirement is that they must own or share in the risk of the covered commodity and have a share in that commodity. We also want to emphasize that producers are able to participate in some of the SBA programs, the PPP, the Payment Protection Program, and then the EIDL I can't even think of the name of it right now, the EIDL program, the Economic Disaster Assistance Program that SBA has. And then there are other USDA programs as well that they are eligible for. They are able to participate in without there being any type of conflict with participating in CFAP. And to clarify, that EIDL, the SBA program that I mentioned, SBA meaning Small Business Administration, EIDL stands for Economic Injury Disaster Assistance Program. So please know that they can participate in that as well as participating in CFAP. CFAP commodities must be unpriced on January 15th of this year to be eligible for CFAP. Unpriced or subject to price risk means that the commodities price is not yet secured through a forward contract or agreement. Additional information on this is also available. I failed to mention at the beginning that we do have some of our program specialists on the call on this webinar who will be able to assist with technical questions as we go along. So if you should have questions, be sure to include them in the chat box, and we will get to them as time permits. So to go over some of the commodities that are not eligible, commodities that did not suffer a 5% or greater price decline from mid-January to mid-April of 2020, they're not eligible. And that may include sheep that is more than 2 years old, eggs, soft red winter wheat, hard red winter wheat, white wheat, rice, flax rye, peanuts, feed barley, ELS cotton, alfalfa, forage, hemp, and tobacco. But it's important to note that USDA may reconsider these excluded commodities if credible evidence is provided. And speaking of providing evidence and adding additional commodities, there are several commodities that were not included in CFAP. USDA actually needs assistance in helping to identify commodities that may have experienced loss and market disruption. FSA has issued what we call a Notice of Funding Availability, which is called a NOFA. A NOFA is a public process that is usually publicized on the Federal Register, and it allows producers the opportunity to provide comment or feedback on whatever that notice is regarding, whatever that program is regarding. And in this case, there is a request for information on any commodities that were not included in CFAP. So instead of a producer looking at the listing of eligible commodities and saying, oh, well, my commodity's not in there, I guess I'll move on, I'm not eligible. However, if there was market loss experience and there is supporting pricing information, pricing data information that is available, that producer can submit that through this request for information. So the request for information again is available online on the Federal Register. We will talk a little bit about that later on how to submit that information. But specific information or data is needed on nursery, aquaculture, and cut flowers. So CFAP payments. We've received a few questions about is this money that has to be paid back? No, it is not money that has to be paid back, nor are there any stipulations on how the funding should be spent. However, it is important to know that producers applying have to have incurred significant loss in order to receive a payment. Payments are not expected to make farmers whole. And I will say that again. We do not expect this to make any farmer or rancher or producer whole. I don't think there's going to be enough funding available in all the country for any of us to be made whole after this coronavirus. But this is intended to give producers some financial relief. Another question that we've received about these payments is, well, if I have a outstanding debt with USDA, are they going to take this funding and apply it to that debt that I owe, satisfy that debt? The answer is no. This funding will not be offset. This funding will go directly to the producer. It will not be offset for any debt or payment owed or offset by Treasury. Forms and documentation. Okay, this is getting into the actual process of how to apply. On our farmers.gov CFAP website, we have all of the forms that are required to apply for this program. It is, in fact, a new form, the CFAP application itself, which is a AD 3114, and then there are forms that are required for the majority of our programs, which is the CCC 901, member information, the AGI, Adjusted Gross Income Form, which is a CCC 941, income received from farming, a 942, highly erodible wetlands determination form, 801026, customer information form, as well as the direct deposit form. What are some of these forms? What do they mean? 901, as I mentioned, that identifies the members of a farm or ranch that's a legal entity. So member information will be completed on that form. That CCC 941 reports the average adjusted gross income for programs where certain income restrictions are applicable. The CCC 942, if applicable, is certification of income that comes from farming. So it's just reporting your farm income, as well as any ranching, forestry, any type of income that for those that exceed that adjusted income limitation. The AD 1026, as I mentioned, is our compliance form, ensures that there is compliance with any highly erodible lands and wetland conservation. The AD 2047, it just provides basic customer contact information. And then, of course, the standard form 3881 is the direct deposit form that collects the banking information in which the payments will be made. Payments are made via direct deposit. It's important to note that if there are any farmers who have participated in any of our programs or NRCS programs and already have their farms registered, they likely will not have to complete some of these forms. So it's important that they contact the office first to see what's already on file this year currently. But keep that in mind. That's just for farmers, ranchers, and producers who have already participated in some of our programs. The CFAP calculator, the application generator, and payment calculator, and that's something we will talk about later, but that is an Excel spreadsheet that has been designed to help assist farmers and ranchers and producers with the application process. So we'll go over that a little bit later, but that is something that you should be aware of and make sure that your members and producers are using that calculator. Continuing with forms and documentation, I think, again, talking about the calculator, it's going to be important that they utilize that tool so that they can transfer some of that information onto the AD 3114 form. And a few things that are important to know that, where there are multiple producers involved in an operation, those producers should report their information on their form based on their share of the operation. But because the payments are calculated differently for each of the different commodities, producers may need to assemble different pieces of information to help support their application process. They're only able to receive payment for production, sales, and inventory that's not subject to price risk. And that means, again, that there's no agreed upon price in the future toward a contract or agreement. But any portion of a commodity that is subject to a binding agreement is ineligible and cannot be included in the application process. So that portion must be subtracted. Farm numbers. That is something that has been a question that has been asked periodically is, does a producer have to have a farm number? As mentioned before, no, they do not need to have it to participate in CFAP. However, they still may need to reach out to the office with questions because that AD 1026 form that I mentioned, the highly erodible wetland determination form, it does certify a producer's compliance with those provisions. So that particular form instructs that producers need a farm number. The form also says whether or not the producer is waived from needing a number, and many of our producers will not need it. They will not meet the waiver requirement identified on the form. So because of that, that's why we said it's important for them to have information available because if they don't meet the waiver requirements, that's identified on the form. They can still move on without submitting it. We will accept it. We will go ahead and proceed with processing the application, but please know that at a later date, the office may in fact follow up to get a farm record established, just so that we can comply with those conservation regulations. So what does a new customer have to do? All of this information is also available online. There's information where they can review eligibility. They're able to download the application, or they can request it by mail. There is a hotline, we'll talk about that later, but there's a customer call center in which new producers can call, and we do encourage that they call first to ask questions, and after they've spoken with the customer representative on the call center line, they will be transferred to their county office that services their area. So we do highly recommend that they reach out to the customer care line first with initial questions, and then be connected to the county office to schedule an appointment or to go ahead and fill out the application work. The number for that customer call center is 1-877-508-8364. Again, this gives them an opportunity to work one-on-one with an FSA employee. These are employees. These are field employees that are working in county offices across the country who are answering these lines, so they can answer questions and be of valuable assistance to producers. Be sure to share this number with your members and with producers that you serve. This next slide is just a flow chart that shows the order of events for farmers, what happens step by step. And, again, it starts with them potentially reaching out to request an application. You can either do it online, or if they'd like to request it by phone, or they can request it by mail. But it's important to know that they do have all of those options available. They don't have to wait for an application. Again, it is online, and they can call the customer care center to answer any questions. They will provide that technical assistance that they will need. But this is just the order of events. Once they schedule the appointment, again, filling out the application, utilizing that payment calculator tool to fill out the application, they would submit it, and then FSA would begin the reviewing process of the application, and then approving it. And again, once it is approved, it will be approved at 80% of that payment will be received. So at that time is when it will be approved or disapproved. As we know, there are farmers, ranchers, and producers who may have limited English proficiency. USDA has made available through our service centers a translation line. So if you work with producers or farmers and ranchers who do not speak English or have limited English, there is a way for them to receive their forms translated in translated materials. There are currently resources online that have been translated. The calculator and the video about CFAP are captioned in different languages. And then at the call center, when they reach the customer care call center, they're able to identify what language they speak. Most of everything that has been translated thus far, as far as fact sheets and materials, has been done in Spanish. But if there are other languages needed, the customer care center would be who producers would need to contact, or you as an organization contact that customer care center and let them know about the producers that you serve and what languages they will need. So just recapping a little bit of what I've said already about guidance to the producers. Everything, all things related to CFAP can be found at www.farmers.gov/CFAP. There you will find the video tutorial regarding the payment calculator. And this really helps producers. It gives an example, a scenario of someone who's interested in applying. It talks about eligibility, the forms to fill out, the documents needed, and how to complete that application. I think if they take a look at the video, it may help streamline some processes and answer some questions for them. But again, if they have any questions, they should call that customer care center. And again, that number is available, and we will share these slides. This is being recorded and will be available on our website later, but all of this information is on the website. So I want to talk to you real quickly about the NOFA process. We are still working on having additional NOFA resources available, hoping to have potentially maybe a video that we could add to the website to walk a producer through the process. But specifically, there is a website that is it's listed on the CFAP webpage. It is the Federal Register portal. That is the portal where a producer can submit online that data and that pricing information about that commodity that they would like to see added. Any additional commodities should be added online through the Federal Register or by mail. It can be mailed, and the address is also on the website to Washington, D.C., but that has to be done by June 22nd. June 22nd, which is 30 days from the date of application sign-up, 30 days was provided for producers to submit additional commodities. So it's very important that you make sure that your producers have that link, that direct link that goes to the Federal Register for them to upload and submit the data that is needed. And when they're there, they will see there are 3 major questions that they'll have to answer as they're uploading that information. You know, it's a question about what is the commodity, what was the price received during the certain dates. That information is there as well. So as long as they are addressing those 3 questions and uploading the supporting information of where they're getting this pricing information from, that will complete the process. And they're done. You know, once they do it, they click submit and it's done. That response is there and it's listed online. If they mail it, the same thing. There is a Federal Register notice document that says the address of where it should be submitted and all of the things that need to be submitted. So if they prefer to do it by regular mail, they can do that as well. But please know that has to be done by June 22nd. Some of the additional resources that are available for producers not related to CFAP, you know, during COVID-19, USDA, all of the agencies took the time to identify existing programs where we could offer flexibilities as possible. So even as recent as a couple of weeks ago, our Farm Loan Division notified all farm loan borrowers about the opportunity for them to receive a loan debt set-aside payment, which will defer the payment to the end of the note. That's one flexibility that has been given. Marketing assistance loan flexibility has been extended. The timeline has been extended to 12 months. And even our partners over at NRCS have some flexibilities that they've announced. And they're reviewing case-by-case basis of where there may be delays in completing some practices. They're working with producers on those contracts if it is as a result of the pandemic. And even though we are going through this pandemic, please know that our offices, we do have folks in our offices who are working by taking phone appointments. Pretty soon we do anticipate some offices will begin opening up in different phases, but from the very beginning we've always had someone in the office to take phone appointments and work with our producers virtually. We have systems in place where digital signatures are used, so when that application is being submitted online, there is software that we are utilizing that allows that producer to download, submit a digital signature, and upload it right back to the offices. So there are so many different workarounds that have been identified to help us operate in this virtual atmosphere. So we're going to talk a little bit about partnering with FSA. Before I do that, I just wanted to check in to see if there are any questions so far about anything that we've gone over that we need to address. Esther? Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to keep going. So as a stakeholder organization, we really want to partner with you. What makes a program successful is not just FSA and the great employees we have working in our county offices. It also deals with partners like you who help us get the word out. All of us work with farmers, ranchers, producers who need our help. And we're just asking, for your help in helping us get that information out, reaching out to producers, especially the ones that you may be in contact with. There are a lot of producers who've never heard of Farm Service Agency, who've never done business with USDA before, but they may benefit from this program. So with that, we would like to facilitate more discussions with your organizations, and part of what our office does is we gather feedback on the program and help work with program divisions to make sure that we are providing resources and educational materials so that our producers are understanding and have an opportunity to participate in the programs. Right now with coronavirus, it's a little challenging to have our offices participate or our staff to participate in live events or meetings. So now we're asking that you think of our offices in a virtual realm. If you are having virtual meetings with your members, with your producers, feel free to reach out and partner with your local FSA. As I mentioned, we have a state office in every state, and there are over 2,100 county offices. So it's important that you work with your local staff who will be happy to join a call, participate in a webinar, and even just have something we call office hours with FSA. If you want to have time dedicated on your organization's meeting or workshop, whatever you have planned, we're happy to have our employees there to help out and answer questions and provide the resources that you need. One of our biggest challenges, though, is working with producers who may not have access to the internet. Believe it or not, there are some. There are rural communities that have really slow internet connections, and then there are communities that don't have it at all. So stakeholders, we rely a lot on you to help us get that education out, that word out. You know, if there's a producer who can't go online and apply and look at all of the different resources that are available, you know, potentially, is there someone in your organization who could provide printed materials? we can do it as well. They can always reach out to the office and request that. They can request the information be provided to them and mailed to them. But as a partnering organization, as you reach out and you meet frequently or talk with your clients and your producers, if there's a way for you to assist in reaching out and providing that information to producers, we really welcome the opportunity for you to do that. And I mentioned having offices across the country. Each county office has a county outreach coordinator. Right now, because of how we're working and because of what's going on, I can imagine that the office is really heavy in processing applications at this time. But we have state outreach coordinators that oversee and manage outreach for each state. There is a website that we have available. It's our FSA website, www.fsa.usda.gov/outreach. When you go on that page, there is a listing of all state outreach coordinators. It has all of their contact information, their telephone numbers, as well as their email addresses. As partner organizations, you need to work with those state outreach coordinators, and not just on this program, but on programs in the future as well. This is an opportunity to work with the agency and partner with us on information. And if you cover multiple states, which a lot of you do who are on this call, national organizations, you would work directly with our office here in D.C. because we work with national organizations that cover several states. So you're also welcome to reach out to our office as well. The stakeholder toolkit that is online, it's also on the farmers.gov/CFAP website. This is everything that you need to help us. Everything you can want or need is right here in this toolkit. It's going to be key messaging points. There's a newsletter article there. There are sample posts for you to add to either your website or your Twitter or Instagram, Facebook pages. There are also links to fact sheets. Besides having just the general CFAP fact sheet, there are also fact sheets for each bucketed commodity that is eligible for this program. So there is a specialty crop fact sheet, there is a livestock, there's a non-specialty crop, and dairy. All of these are beneficial to the producers that you serve, and depending on what your organization targets or works on, if it's dairy, then the dairy fact sheet would be very beneficial for you. But the link to the payment calculator is there. Frequently asked questions, there's a website that is updated every so many days with different questions and answers. All of these things are very helpful and what you will need to help us. I really hope that you will take advantage of that toolkit and utilize it to help us amplify the message. Technical assistance. Another wonderful benefit of having relationships with you as organizations is that you allow us, or you help us to bridge the gap. You help us with your time, your attention, and with technical assistance to producers on FSA programs. This, of course, is another program where we do need your help in reaching as many people as possible. So we want to make sure that we're engaged with you and that leads to more support and technical assistance for our producers. Sometimes it's hard for them to understand the ins and outs of a program, and they may have questions. They don't know where to go or where to turn. And you as a partner organization, you're able to collect that information, point them in the right direction, and help navigate them through the process. That's really one of the challenges that we've had, is making sure that we're reaching out to everyone, because again, everyone may not have internet access. Our underserved customers are our major focus for us. Underserved includes beginning farmers, ethnic minorities, veterans participating in ag programs, and then anyone who's new to FSA or USDA. They would be considered an underserved producer, and they would need more assistance. They will need to understand why not all crops are covered. They may need to know more about why isn't there more people on the ground? Why aren't we hearing more outreach? You know, due to COVID, most of our offices are closed to the public. We're unable to do public events. We are starting to see that change and turn around, and slowly offices are open, but there are instances where there are limitations to staff and their ability to get out and conduct outreach. So that's where we really need your help with that technical assistance, leading them to the local office or to that 1-800 number. So again, these resources are available on the farmers.gov/CFAP website. To subscribe to our alerts, we want to make sure that you are receiving news and information and webinar event schedules from us. To do that, you will need to subscribe to our news alerts. You do that by visiting www.fsa.usda.gov/subscribe and enroll with your email address and select Outreach and Education to receive alerts. That lets you know about the webinars, the information, the deadlines, sign-up deadlines, everything that we put out that will go to you directly. One of the things that I wanted to mention, and we failed to put it on a slide. This was just finalized yesterday, and we still don't have our presenter links posted yet. We hope to have them posted this weekend. But producer webinars will start next Tuesday the 9th. We're planning to have a series of webinars strictly for producers, just like today was strictly for partner organizations. We're hoping to have producer engagement next week, giving them an opportunity to log in and speak with program specialists, go over specific segments. On Tuesday, the first webinar we're having, I believe the subject is going to be specialty crop producers. On the following Thursday, there will be a webinar on dairy and non-specialty crop. That following Tuesday, it will again be livestock and specialty crop. We're going to wrap up that following Thursday on a catch-all webinar for organizations as well as producers, covering FSA assisting producers in the time of COVID-19. And it will not be specific to CFAP. It will cover all of the different programs that we have available during the coronavirus, all the flexibilities for all of the programs. And we'll also talk a little bit about understanding targeted segments and what funding and provisions are available for underserved producers. So that schedule is all on our website, the fsa.usda.gov/outreach. If you go to the FSA outreach page, if you go to the webinars, you'll see all of those webinars where producers will be able to pre-register for those events. That is also the site where all of the recordings will be housed. If there are any questions, that website will have basically all of the information as well as the farmers.gov information. At this time, I want to stop talking and see if there are any questions that we've received about anything that we've gone over today. Esther, do we have any questions?
Yes, we do have a lot of questions, and I will just also say for folks who submitted questions that we're not able to get to today, we will follow up with you, and any questions that, would benefit our larger stakeholder community, they will be posted, answers to those questions will be posted on farmers.gov/CFAP in the FAQ section. But Latrice, I'm hoping we're getting a lot of questions about the notice of funding availability process. And so hoping one of our program specialists can address just the issue of whether or not information submitted for the NOFA is confidential. And Tana, I'm wondering if you can address that question.
Tana may have had to drop off.
I'm sorry. This is
there
Tana. Re-ask the question. I'm sorry. I was listening to another call.
Oh, yes, Tana, just a question about whether or not we had some questions around producers submitting information through the NOFA and whether or not that information is confidential or whether or not those comments will be public. And also wondering, we have a couple of questions around the NOFA, whether or not, when a commodity, if USDA does decide that a commodity is an additional eligible commodity, whether or not that will be, whether or not an applicant will be notified directly or how USDA will make that public for others to know.
Okay, so all comments to the NOFA are public. They have to be made publicly available, but we are not asking for specific financial information. We are asking for, while it may be specific to you, to a particular producer, we are asking for public information about buying points and other resources like that. As far as how it will go once the evaluation on the information is completed, there will be additional notice of funding availabilities that are provided, and they will actually identify any additional crops. So that's the methodology that will be used to identify the additional crops.
Thank you. We had a question about eligibility for CFAP and some questions around whether or not the program is limited to operations of specific sizes.
I'm sorry, I'm on a call on the NOFA. So was that question for Tana again? I apologize.
Hey, Esther, would you like me to answer?
Yeah, anyone who's able to answer that will be great.
Yeah, I think I can answer that, and not to step on Tana's shoes, but I did hear the question, and the question is the program designated for any size dairy, or not essentially dairy, but can operations be too large to apply? No, I think the eligibility really is open to all size operations. Okay, so again, there's certainly all operations can apply for CFAP.
Thank you, Doug. I'm also hoping you can maybe address a question specifically around pooled commodities. It sounds like there are a lot of questions coming into the chat about commodities that are pooled, and do we have guidance for those producers or at this time?
This is Tana, and I will jump in on that one. The answer is no. We generally do not have final guidance yet on pooled commodities.
Okay, so when we do have final guidance, we will follow up and we'll post that information online. Latrice, can you talk a little bit more about the producer webinars? There's some questions about the kinds of content that will be covered, as well as where producers or our customers can access those.
Sure. The website where they can register is our FSA webinar website, and we'll make sure that that gets added to the chat so that everyone can see that address. But the first webinar will be on Tuesday, June 9th at 3 p.m. Eastern. That producer webinar is strictly for specialty crop producers. And what we'll do, we'll have our specialty crop program manager to join us to talk a little bit about CFAP and specialty crop eligibility. We'll dig a little deeper into the NOFA process, helping specialty crop producers understand how to submit additional commodities. But they will be able to register from that website. And again, as I mentioned before, if any of your producers are not subscribing to our outreach and education alerts, I would highly recommend that. That way you know that they're going to receive it and they'll know when things are being posted. I do know through a lot of partnerships and networking, a lot of emails just get forwarded and you get the information from a forward. But to receive it directly, I would suggest that you and the members actually subscribe to our alerts. That second producer webinar will be June the 11th, which is next Thursday at 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern. That one is for dairy and non-specialty crop producers, and we will have our national program specialist handling dairy, CFAP for dairy, to talk a little bit about dairy operations in CFAP. Again, we'll talk a little bit about the NOFA process to make sure they understand that and the application process. The third one that I mentioned is going to be on Tuesday, June 16th at 3 p.m. Eastern. That one will be for non-specialty crop and livestock producers and ranchers. We will talk a little bit with the the livestock manager about CFAP for livestock and non-specialty crop producers. Again, talk about the NOFA process and understanding how to submit. And then that final webinar I mentioned on June 18th is FSA programs in the time of coronavirus, is just for everyone. That's open to all producers and organizations to learn a little bit about all of the FSA programs that have flexibilities made during COVID. I mentioned briefly during this call about how loan borrowers are able to receive disaster set-asides, how the marketing assistance loans time period has been extended. There are a number of things that have been moved, like all foreclosure actions, acceleration actions, all of those things have been suspended during COVID. So a lot of flexibilities have been provided. A lot of sign-ups on different programs are coming up. We'll talk about additional programs, ARC PLC, WIP Plus, acreage reporting, all of the county committees, all of the things that are going on right now with FSA, we will cover on that last webinar, as well as taking a targeted look at funding and provisions made for underserved farmers and ranchers.
Thanks, Latrice. We had a lot of questions come in from producers who have crops that are commodities, that are not currently eligible for CFAP, and they are asking whether or not they should still submit an application for CFAP. So I'm just wondering if somebody can address that.
So this is Tana again, and I can address that. And if the crop is not currently eligible, then submitting an application is unnecessary at this time because FSA can take no action on it. As a matter of fact, if there is a crop that is included on the application that is not eligible and the producer signs that application, then because there is a crop that's not eligible at this time, the application cannot be entered into our automated system as signed by the producer, so therefore we can't take action on it. So that if there is a crop for which they are attempting to gain eligibility, have submitted documentation through the NOFA, et cetera, do not put that on the application at this time, because until it becomes eligible, the county committee, who is our local authority for approving or taking action on those applications, will be unable to complete action on the application. So if they happen to call the local county office and the application is loaded in the system and they say they want kumquats and kumquats is an eligible crop, then it won't be included. So the application that would be provided to the producer for signature would not have that on there. But if someone is using the tool that Latrice talked about or is filling out a manual application and there's a crop on there that is not eligible, we can take no action.
Thank you. And Tana, we're getting a lot of questions also about the term subject to price risk, and wondering if you can just provide some examples of what that means to our stakeholders.
So the general idea on subject to price risk, and sometimes you'll hear us refer to it as unpriced. So what we're talking about is something that was affected by the marketing issues that occurred as a result of COVID. So if a producer or a grower has a contract, for example, in place, and I'll just use a very basic example. I have a contract with Walmart to buy 1,000 pounds of strawberries, and that's all that the contract says. That's an unpriced contract because Walmart may have paid something significantly different than what I had anticipated, because they don't have nearly as many people buying strawberries now, so they don't need as many, so they're not going to pay me as much, or they may not even pay me for as many. But if I have that contract for Walmart and it says that they're going to pay me a nickel a pound, which is unreasonable, but if it's, let's say $1 a pound, it says I'm going to sell 1,000 pounds and they're going to pay me $1 a pound, we've got a contract in place, then that was already in place on January 15th. That is not subject to price risk. What we are talking about is something that is unpriced or is subject to price risk. So basically, if it was an unpriced product, then that's what we're talking about as eligible for CFAP.
Thanks, Tana.
Okay, Esther. Is there one more question we can do before we conclude?
Well, I know that we've gone over time. I'll just say that we did get a lot of questions in, and so we'll be taking some time in the next few days to go over them and follow up with our stakeholders who wrote questions in.
Okay. And again, as we mentioned, there is a web page that has several questions. It's the frequently asked questions page that is showing now on your screen, farmers.gov/CFAP/FAQ. That is updated, I believe, daily or every other day. If your question is one that has not been asked and it is, deemed to be something that we're commonly receiving, we will actually add that to that frequently asked question page. So I do encourage you all to take a look at that. As we're working to answer you individually, there may be some responses already on that page that can assist you. Again, we thank you for partnering with us. We thank you for your participation. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on our webinar page. That's fsa.usda.gov/outreach. Click on webinars. It will be there. There will also be the links for the upcoming producer webinars, the registration links. And also know that these slides will also be available. We will also have the slides near the recording on the website. So just want to make sure that you are aware of that. I know a lot of people were unable to make it today, so the recording and slides will be made available, and the same for the producer webinars as well. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Thanks so much again for your participation, and I hope you have a wonderful day.